Good evening. Hello and welcome. My name is Alice Simon. I'm a professor in the economics department, and I direct the Walter Amati Center for Economics, Business, and Entrepreneurship. It is my honor to welcome our honored guests, Mr. Jeff Long, our President Jones, alumni, students, members of the Wesleyan community, members of the Delaware community. Thank you for being here. For everybody who's watching it on web stream, hello. And we're in for a very interesting evening. I would just like to share with you that this is our 11th annual Heisler Business Ethics Lecture. And this lecture is sponsored by the Walter Amati Center, but it's funded by the Heisler Family Endowment for the Study of Business Ethics. It is an endowment that honors 3 Wesleyan alumni: James Heisler, class of '38, Robert Heisler, class of '52, and Bruce Heisler, the class of '49. James Heisler, class of '38, was owner of the A.C. Williams Company and director of the Second National Bank in Ravenna, Ohio. In the late 1990s, he endowed an ethics chair at Ohio Wesleyan, and I am honored to say that I hold that chair. Bruce Heisler in 1942, also from the same city, also a member of the family business. He was an athlete at Ohio Wesleyan in football, basketball, baseball, and golf. He was named an All-Ohio football player 3 times and won the Bunn Trophy for MVP after the 1948 game. He was also inducted into the Ohio Wesleyan Athletic Hall of Fame in 1970. Robert Heisler, class of '49, also worked in the family business and was often a golf champion at the Twin Lakes Country Club. He was also inducted into the Ohio Wesleyan Athletic Hall of Fame in 1968. How fitting that this evening we focus on ethics in leadership and decision-making with one of our own scholar athletes in honor of a family of scholar athletes. It is my pleasure to introduce the president of the university, Rock Jones, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Alice, and thank all of you for your presence here this evening. We look forward to the many opportunities presented by the Walter Amati Center to bring to campus distinguished speakers who address issues of importance to our students as well as to the larger community. It is good to have all of you here this evening. The Heisler Business Ethics Lecture, as Alice indicated, was endowed by members of the Heisler family and provides an opportunity each year for the university to bring to campus an individual whose accomplishments as a leader are built on the foundation of ethical values. Together, this occasion invites each of us to think about the ethical values we seek to weave into the tapestries of our lives, and to encourage us as a campus to reflect more deeply on our commitment to an education that cultivates the next generation of moral leaders for our global society. It is my great pleasure to introduce the 2013 Heisler Business Ethics Lecturer, Jeff Long. Jeff is a native of Ohio and a 1982 graduate of Ohio Wesleyan. Jeff came to OWU as a first-generation college student and shared with me earlier today some of the ways in which OWU opened for him windows to the world of leadership that we now see evident in a life of extraordinary accomplishment. Here at OWU, Jeff majored in economics, where he was particularly influenced by Dr. Bob Gitter. Jeff was a varsity athlete, where he played football and baseball, winning 7 varsity letters. Bruce Tall, Jeff's teammate at OWU, who now serves as defensive coordinator in the football program at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, sent us this note about Jeff, and I quote Bruce. Jeff was one of the most competitive, intelligent, focused, and mature football student athletes I have ever seen. Jeff was our quarterback and then played defense at times. He was a great team leader and team player. He was a 4-year letter winner in football and a 3-year letter winner in baseball. He was an outstanding student who was mature beyond his years. I follow his career closely and am proud to call him a friend." End quote. Following graduation from OU, Jeff started his postgraduate career in athletics as a graduate assistant football coach at Miami of Ohio, where he also earned his master's in education in 1983, before moving on to staff positions at Rice, Duke, and North Carolina State prior to joining Michigan. He began his lengthy career in college athletic administration at the University of Michigan. Jeff's first appointment as a director of athletics was at Eastern Kentucky. He then served as senior athletics director at Oklahoma University before becoming director of athletics at the University of Pittsburgh. In the fall of 2007, Jeff moved to the University of Arkansas as vice chancellor and director of athletics. In that capacity, he serves on the university's executive committee and oversees all of its athletic program. When he was hired at Arkansas, he was noted for a track record of the highest commitment to the concept of the student athlete and for his vision for excellence in both the classroom and on the field of competition. On the forefront of NCAA governance, Jeff has served on the NCAA Management Council as one of the athletic administrators that oversaw the organization and regulation of Division I in the NCAA. His experience as an athletic director and administrator in America's most prestigious conferences, the Big 12, Big 10, Big East, Atlantic Coast, and now Southeast Conference, has made his counsel highly sought on key issues regarding collegiate athletics. On a personal and somewhat provincial note, I was born in the old Washington County Hospital just up the street from Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I will resist my prenatal impulse to call the hogs. But I do find it interesting to contemplate a bishop whose primary responsibilities include calling a hog. On a more serious note, from my dual perspectives as president of his alma mater and a native of the state in which he now lives and works, I have watched Jeff Long's work at Arkansas with great interest. I have gained deep admiration and respect for his leadership and for his accomplishments. In a world where it is tempting to think winning at all costs defines success in every measure, Jeff Long arrives at work each day with a commitment to the accomplishment and well-being of the student athlete in all aspects of the student experience. While he has done all of the things required of an athletic director at a BCS institution, raise money, attract and retain high-profile coaches, develop facilities, create an atmosphere for winning programs, win the respect and admiration of alumni, fans, faculty, politicians, and administrators, he is quick to point out that the work that means the most to him is the development of a program that enhances academic performance and increases graduation rates of student athletes. Along the way, he has won immense respect from all constituencies. Most importantly, along the way, he has been willing to make profoundly difficult decisions that others in similar positions elsewhere seem unable or unwilling to make. He has made these decisions because of the foundation of ethical values that define who he is as a person and guide the work that he does. This too may be provincial, but I can't help wonder if the defining difference between Jeff Long and so many others in his profession is that Jeff Long was formed in the Division III environment and with the foundation of the liberal arts as his primary base. He has brought pride and honor to his alma mater, and we are deeply grateful for his presence with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Long.
Wow, I am thrilled to see all of you out here tonight, and what an introduction. Rock, thank you so much. I'm a flood of emotions come over me as you speak and as I've walked around campus today and met many students and faculty members. And gosh, I can't tell you how humbled I am to return to Ohio Wesleyan, a place that I arrived at in 1978, a very scared, very shy, sheltered young man to the University of Arkansas. There are so many people out here tonight that I am just excited to see. Dr. Gordon, you know, I'm so proud of my time here with Dr. Gordon. He was a respected athletic director, and I knew that even at that time as a student athlete. I shared with him a little bit before that he actually gave me my first taste of athletic administration experience because he put me on his student athlete athletic board, and I served a year with him in that role, and it really started me thinking about this athletic administration thing and what it was all about. But so I'm honored that he is here with me tonight, and Dr. Gordon, thank you so much. I want a round of applause for you, sir. And before we get around to the topic at hand, I want to say a couple things about some other people. And certainly Dr. Gitter was very influential in inviting me back. And Dr. Simon, I appreciate you thinking enough of my work to invite me back to address this group. But Bob Gitter reached out to me. And, you know, he didn't know this. I shared this with a group of students earlier today. But, you know, faculty many times have no idea the impact that they have on those sometimes blank stares looking up at them from a seat in Edgar Hall back in the day. But, you know, Bob Gitter had a tremendous impact on my life. I was bouncing around between Dr. Shanklin in Rocks for Jocks as my major. How many of you know Dr. Shanklin or knew him before he passed? What a wonderful man Dr. Shanklin was. He said, I've always wanted to share this someplace, but one of his most profound statements was, you know, Jeff, it's like trying to push a whipped cream boat through a Jell-O sea. You just can't do it. And I've carried that with me all these years as he tried to explain plate tectonics to me. So anyway, Dr. Shanklin was someone that was very important to me, somebody that I remember. He was a professor that loved what he was doing. And I want to get it back to Dr. Gitter. And so I bounced around to a number of courses, and I took an intro to econ class. And here was this, I'll call him a gentleman, but he had long hair. You know, of course, we all did in the late 70s, right, Dr. Gitter? We all had long hair. And he was from this place where Michigan, where academics was like up here, and he talked about Michigan. But he wore tennis shoes every day to teach it. And he might wear a shirt and a tie, but he had tennis shoes. But his enthusiasm, his passion, his energy had a profound effect on me. And it made me want to come back and learn more from this professor. So I'm sure he had no idea of his individual impact on me, but he's largely the reason that I kind of changed majors for like the third time and decided that I was going to major in economics. Through my course, I decided I also wanted to, finally got to come to grips that I wanted to teach and coach in high school. After so many people said, you don't want to teach, you can't make any money, you know, high school teachers are poor, you don't want to do that, why would you do that? But really, I struggled that for the longest time. And then Dr. Gitter's econ class gave me kind of a sign of hope that I could do that and that I could teach and coach in high school. And so I shared it with the class today, but I want to offer my applause to Dr. Gitter for the hundreds and thousands of students you've touched over the years at Ohio Wesleyan. You touched me in a way that I'm sure you had no idea, but thank you, Bob, for what you do for students at Ohio Wesleyan. And I think he liked me more after I left because I did work 10 years in Michigan, and I think he liked that, you know. But I also wanted to say, you know, obviously Jack Vouch was my football coach, and I know Jack has passed away. And then some of you might remember the name Les Michaels was a baseball coach, but then who was a special person. And I got to actually go on a retirement trip. Bob, you may remember they allowed the baseball team. Dr. Gordon certainly remembers this, but part of Les Michaels' retirement is we as a baseball team went to Puerto Rico for spring break and played baseball in Puerto Rico. And again, one of those very impactful things on my life. So I appreciate those coaches that I had here. And I also wanted to share just a moment about an exceptional coach who I never played for. And that's Dr. Jay Martin. Jay was obviously a professor, still is a professor here, still is a coach here. I got to see him earlier today in the hallway, and I stopped and I wanted to make a point that even though Jay never coached me, I didn't play soccer, I didn't play lacrosse, but even as a student athlete, his excitement, his passion, his leadership for his sports had an impact on me, and I played football and baseball. And back in that time, you know, football and baseball guys and soccer and lacrosse guys, they didn't mix. But I'll tell you what, as someone who valued the coaches that I played for, looked up to the coaches that I played for, Jay Martin was somebody who had impact on my life, even though he never coached me 1 second. So I'm so glad I had a chance to visit with him today and just let him know how appreciative I was of what he's done for, again, countless of Ohio Wesleyan student athletes here. You know, this has been just a wonderful day for me to come back and relate, but I am excited to share with you a little bit about my profession. And I think I will go back and repeat myself a little bit, and Dr. Jones did a tremendous job of introducing me, but I want to share a little bit of my story so you do know where I come from, and maybe many of the students out there today, and maybe we're in a similar place. But you know, I am a first-generation college graduate. I shared with Dr. Jones and others today. You know, my parents didn't graduate high school, so this was a very traumatic thing for me to go away to college. No one had ever done it. Everybody had been expected just to go to work in the plant or go to work in some job when you finished high school. So it was really athletics. It was sport that drove me to college, even at the Division III level. I wasn't ready to put down my glove, my spikes, or the football. I wanted to continue to play, and I'm so grateful that Ohio Wesleyan offered me that opportunity. And as I look back on my career, I'm thankful that I was wise enough to choose Ohio Wesleyan and not try to compete in athletics at a level that I wasn't cut out for. I was a passionate athlete, passionate student. I was always that athlete that the coaches were trying to replace. Trust me, when I earned a starting job, they had to find somebody else because this guy's just not good enough, but he's the best we have. So I lived my life playing that way, but I loved every minute of it. I was in touch with who I was as an athlete. I knew I wasn't very good, but I was going to fool them for as long as I could. And it got me 7 letters here at Ohio Wesleyan and a great experience and friendships and a lasting education that I will never regret coming to the university, Ohio Wesleyan University. So let me spend a few minutes also I want to thank the Heisler family. What a gift that they gave back to bring speakers on campus to talk about something that's extremely important. That's ethics, ethics in business, ethics in life. You know, ethics are important to every walk of life, and certainly we see them play out on the national level in both business, and certainly we've seen them on the national level in intercollegiate athletics. I also want to tell you all that Dr. Jones is very well respected in Arkansas. He left Arkansas about the time I was coming, but I've heard so many wonderful things about him, and that piqued my interest, to be quite honest, to follow my university even closer. And I could not be more proud of his leadership here. We see academics growing, we see athletics flourishing, and again, at my level, we talk a lot about athletics and academics. They're not mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand, and I think we see that under your leadership here, Dr. Jones, and how it plays out hand in hand. So I congratulate you for your work at my alma mater, so thank you very much. When I was preparing for these remarks, Dr. Gitter said, well, just think back. I'm a nervous speaker. I hope you haven't picked up on it, but I am. He said, just think back to 32 years ago when you were a student. What would you want to hear from yourself? And I said, oh, my gosh. So that did help me, Bob. I tried to put together some things that I think that maybe you can take with you, and I'm hoping that we make it to the question and answer portion, because that's the part I really love. I also thought I'd take one moment to just talk about the journey. And for me, life is a journey. And it is a cliche. We hear that often, life's a journey. But it's a cliche because it's a truism. And I think you young people there today are going to see a journey that's much different than most students that have graduated before you. You're going to change jobs a number of times. You're going to relocate to a number of areas. I was ahead of my time. I've worked at 10 universities. I've lived in 9 different states. And it has been a wonderful journey, but the journey is really what life's all about. And again, like I said, we hear that cliche, and I wanted to share a little bit of my journey, really, and I'll do it very quickly. I left here because of Jerry Cornell, who some of you know that. I know Dr. Gordon knows the name Jerry Cornell. Any of you that went to high school at Delaware Hayes High School knows that. I told the story, but Jerry Cornell is where I did my student teaching. And I was on my way to Pocatello, Idaho, to be a graduate assistant football coach at Idaho State University. I sent out over 200 letters just begging for a graduate assistantship, because at the end of my career I decided, you know what, I want to try to coach. I want to be a teacher and a coach. I got to be a graduate assistant. Well, I happened to be doing my student teaching with Jerry Cornell. He asked me where I was going. I told him Idaho. He said, you don't want to go there. Let me call my friend Tom Reed, the head football coach of Miami of Ohio, who was a Delaware high school graduate. And, well, the rest is history. Tom brought me on as a graduate assistant football coach. After 1 year, he became the head coach at North Carolina State. He asked me to come with him in December to that job, and I said no. I had learned the value of education, and I had started that master's degree, and I wanted to be the first person in my family to obtain a master's degree. So I turned down my first job, and I was sharing with some, it was $20,000 in 1982, which was a fair amount of money at the time. But I told him I wanted to stay and get my degree. So he said, sure enough, but the job probably won't be there. So I finished my master's at Miami, and sure enough, the job was there. So when I left Oxford, I went to North Carolina State and started a job there. I went 3.5 years. I shared with the students earlier, we were outstanding in football. We took over a program, and we were 3-8, and we were 3-8, and then that third year we broke through, and we were 3-8. So that was our last year at North Carolina State. So after 3-8 seasons, I was sent packing. But I think there is something of value here. You know, I had a contract. I had 6 months more on that contract. I could either sit at home or I could go out and try to take advantage of the situation. I drove 30 miles to the north and volunteered at that football power, Duke University. You know Duke, their powerful football program. But you know what? I volunteered there. I went to work there, and then I was very fortunate that summer. They had a coach leave. Because I was there working for nothing, they hired me. It was my first on-the-field coaching job at Duke University. 6 months later from then, the coach left. I was out the door again with 6 months on a contract. So I could either sit at home or I could go out and make the best of the situation. I got the opportunity to go to the University of Michigan as a graduate assistant. I stepped back to move forward. I did that. I worked for Bo Schembechler, who many of you will recognize that name, for 1 season, and it convinced me to get the heck out of coaching. I'd had enough of this, and I actually did step back and evaluate my career and think, you know what, I probably don't have what it takes to be a successful college football coach. You better change your direction. I had gotten the bug of working with student athletes, so I wanted to remain close to student athletes. So I took my first administrative job actually at another football power you all recognize, Rice University in Houston, Texas, the Rice Owls. And I'm going to try to keep going fast here because I want to get to the topic at hand. But I think the journey is important. I went there for about 9 months, and then Coach Schembechler became the athletic director as well as football coach at the University of Michigan. I'm very proud. I was his first hire as athletic director. He hired me back from Rice University, and I worked at the University of Michigan for 10 years. And I told Bob I worked for and transitioned 5 different athletic directors in 10 years, and it was an incredible experience for me. Then I reached a point at Michigan where I was no longer going to continue on the path that I wanted to continue on, so I looked for a new position, and I moved to what some people thought was a lateral step back, but for me, I saw it as a step back to go forward. I took an associate AD job at Virginia Tech University. From there, I spent about it was somewhere between 3 and 4 months on the job at Virginia Tech before I got the opportunity to become the athletic director at Eastern Kentucky University, a 1AA school or an FCS school. From there, I spent 2.5 years, and I got a call unsolicited from Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at University of Oklahoma. He asked me to come out and be his number 2 person, and I finally come to the realization that if I thought I could be an AD at that next level, I needed to be on that next level. So I accepted a position there. That opened the door to me to become the athletic director at the University of Pittsburgh. I spent almost 5 years there before the door opened again, and I had the opportunity to go to the University of Arkansas and compete in what I believe is the strongest athletic conference in America. So that's been my journey. I've been at the University of Arkansas I'm in my 6th year now, and certainly we've seen a number of things in 6 years at the University of Arkansas, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish there. But with that, I will now want to share a little bit of what I came here to talk about. You know, little did I know when I started at Ohio Wesleyan would someday that I'd wake up and be leading a $100 million sports and entertainment business in the confines of higher education. And there are a number of things that are in conflict when you talk about intercollegiate athletics at the Division I level on a university campus. And we could spend a whole lecture on that, but you know, certainly my path from Ohio Wesleyan has had a huge impact on me in my leadership role at the University of Arkansas and all the institutions that I've had the pleasure of working with. I hope one of the things that you take away from my talk tonight is the importance of discovering who you are. And certainly that's part of what college is all about. But if you stop after you leave college, you're really selling yourself short. You have to continue to grow and seek out educational opportunities as you progress in life. And, you know, I hope you'll take away from here tonight, you have to figure out who you are. And that might sound very simplistic, and it is to some degree. But as you go through life's journey, it's very important for you to figure out who you are and what you stand for in your core values. And just as importantly, if not more, it's important for you to understand what you will not stand for. And I'll come back to that in a few minutes, but it's very important. Because sooner or later, when you're faced with a difficult decision or even a crisis situation, if you know who you are and what you stand for, you won't waste time trying to figure out what your core values are. You already know them. And then you'll spend the time, the precious time, dealing with a difficult decision or crisis. You'll spend it on the crisis at hand and managing that the right way. So many times, crises are timely. And if you have to stop and assess who you are and what you stand for, you'll miss the opportunity to be timely in your decisions. In a very simplistic way, I think about it this way. And many things I boil down to very simple terms. And I think of the old cowboy, John Wayne. Those of you that are older know the Westerns and John Wayne. And John Wayne said, you know, you have to have a code to live by. And that's really what finding out what your core values are, what you stand for, what you're all about, is finding a code to live by. So I was very fortunate through athletics. Early, you heard Bruce Tall talk about I was mature behind my years. Really what he was saying is I didn't have any fun in college. I studied too much and I didn't go out. But, you know, I think that it's important that that you do understand who you are and what you're all about. And you're not going to know it all by the time you leave college. Really, your opportunity to grow and learn begins when you leave college. You know, I'm a big believer in leadership. And we've all heard people described as born leaders. And I know you know some. I know you've probably used that term. You've probably pointed at people and said, you know what, he or she is a born leader. I would tell you that I believe in my career, more leaders, far more leaders, are developed than are born. And I believe in this principle. And while I didn't have an organized program for leadership training, it's really something that, again, not sure where it came from. It probably came from the role models I chose to emulate. But I looked for people that I could role model, for people that were leaders that meant something to me. And then I tried to understand what leadership was all about. And I took advantage of my professional organization. It's the National Association of Collegiate Athletic Directors. We have a convention every year. And I made sure, once I made that move to administration, that I wanted to eat up everything there was to know about athletic administration. And there were years that my employer didn't pay for me to go to these seminars. So I paid for myself, which was, you know, a lot of people said, what do you mean? Your school won't pay for this, but you're going to pay for it yourself? And absolutely, because I was hungry to learn. I wanted to be the very best athletic director I could be, and I sought out that professional development. And again, that's a message to you young people. As you head out from college, you haven't learned all you're going to learn. You've just begun to start to learn. But I believe so much in leadership training that one of the first things I did as athletic director at the University of Arkansas was establish a leadership curriculum. We believe it's the first in the Southeastern Conference, and it's more than just bringing in a lecture to talk about leadership. That's important. That's done many places. I applaud that. That's a piece of it. But we decided we were going to invest resources in leadership training. And we created a curriculum. We sought out a consultant. We used a gentleman by the name of Jeff Jansen. He uses a book called Team Captains. And then we've taken that book and we've applied it to athletics at the University of Arkansas. And leadership training is not what you might think. We begin at the very elementary levels. We begin what it means to be a follower. What does a good follower look like? Because in athletics, most of the time, your freshmen coming in the door, they're not going to be the leaders on your team. We need to teach them how to be an outstanding follower, because most of them came to college as the leaders, not necessarily because they demonstrated leadership characteristics, because they were the best player on their team. So we felt like we needed to educate them. So we started, what's it mean to be a follower? What should you look for in the leaders on your team to follow? What are the characteristics? What are the ideals? What are the core purposes? What are those values you should be looking for? But we didn't stop there. The training went throughout the year. So as a freshman, they had a number of seminars throughout the year that focused on becoming a leader. The next year, as sophomores, we had Emerging Leaders program. The curriculum was different, very different than that first year. And then we moved on to what we call our veteran leaders, typically those student athletes who were becoming the captains of their athletic teams. So it's really been a 4-year program to develop leaders class by class. And the thing that really has been the difference maker for us has been we've included the coaches. So many times as an athletic administrator, we look out and we think, well, they're the head coach. They know about leadership. They're already leading. But you know what? We felt like there were many things our coaches still needed to learn. And the piece was very exciting for us. We tied it all together because as we were teaching those seminars for our student athletes, we brought that back to the coaches, did sessions with them, and shared with them how we were utilizing leadership training to benefit the student athletes, but then also how that can benefit them in their team. And we've seen amazing results. I'm a huge believer in leadership training. And again, you may not have that in an institution, you may not have that in your business, but what I would tell you to do is to seek that out on your own if you don't have it, because leadership training, continuing to grow and learn, throughout life is going to become more and more important because the speed of life is going to continue to quicken. So if you stop learning when you leave from college, you're going to get passed by very, very quickly. So pardon me for 1 second. So we've seen great results. You know, we surveyed our student athlete. 94% of them said that they were better from being in this program. Now, 94% is off the charts when you're doing a survey like that. You know, you hope you get 50. 94% said our program has helped them. And we've seen it play out not only in the survey. Our graduation rates are on the rise. Our student-athlete GPA during the course of this 5-year period has grown from somewhere around a 2.8 cum for our entire athletic program to almost a 3.1. Now, the leadership program is not the only piece of that puzzle, but I will tell you it's a significant piece. We've seen our student-athletes go from community service, which we think is another important part of the teaching we do in athletics. We do service learning. We started the program in our first year after our leadership training. We did 3,000 hours of community service by our student athletes. I challenged them to better. The next year they doubled to 6,000 hours of community service, and that's about 500 student athletes. But again, the leadership training taught them the value of community service more than just going out and picking up trash or visiting with kids. We turned it around and helped them understand the value in that and what they could learn from that. So it's been a very, very rewarding program. And then finally, we've seen it in success on the field. Last year in our athletic program, many of you are familiar with the Director's Cup at the Division I level. We have the Director's Cup, which judges all of our programs, and we have at the Division III level, all levels of the NCAA. We finished in the top 20 in the Director's Cup, and again, for us, that's the highest finish in our school's history. We're extremely proud of that, but we think it's a combination of all of these things leading us to better academic performance, better athletic performance, and a key piece to that is leadership training. And certainly in that leadership training, we're teaching the values of character. We're teaching ethics. We're teaching about honesty. They're not earth-shattering concepts. They're ones that we have to be reminded of at times because we're all faced with challenges and we're faced with difficult decisions. And then finally, one last thing that we've noticed in our program, and certainly you don't have it here at Ohio Wesleyan University, and that is some of the behavior problems we've had with student athletes. We've seen those diminish in the 5 years of our leadership training program. Again, that's not the only reason. That's part of the reason that we've seen a decline in bad behavior by student athletes. Okay. You know, Warren, I'm a fan of Warren Buffett. He's done some amazing things in investments, and so I do read a little bit about Warren Buffett. And there's a quote that caught me that Warren Buffett said. He said, when he's looking at people to hire, he looks for three things. He looks for integrity, he looks for intelligence, and he looks for energy. But without the first, the other two will kill you. So I think we've seen that played out. Again, let me say that again because I had to stop and grasp it when I read it. He looks for three things: integrity, intelligence, and energy. But without the first, integrity, the other two will kill you in business. So to me, those are profound words. And, you know, integrity is something that is very core to what we teach in our intercollegiate athletic program and very important to us as we present our program. Now, many of you may ask, you know, what does an athletic director know about business? And let me just share for you in a moment, and I touched on it earlier. We're now at $100 million in annual revenues at Arkansas, at the University of Arkansas. Now, your neighbor up the street here, Ohio State, probably, I don't know, I didn't look this up, but I should have. they're probably an $140, $150 million entity now. But in a state like Arkansas, that Rock and his wife Melissa know very well, we have less than 3 million people in the state of Arkansas. Ohio has about 11 million people. So in our state, a program that generates $100 million revenue is a tremendous economic engine, not only for our university, but for our state. So we deal in all levels of business, really. As I mentioned to you, we're a sports and entertainment business, but we operate in the context of higher education. And again, there's a lot of conflicts that come from that, but we're a $100 million institution. We recently did an economic impact study, and on an annual basis, our Razorback athletic program generates about $156 million of income and revenue in the state of Arkansas. If our plans go as we predict they will in the next 5 years with all of our construction projects that we plan to do, we'll have an impact of over $1 billion with a B in the next 5 years in the state of Arkansas. So in our institution, Arkansas Razorback Athletics is a huge business, and certainly it is on any of the BCS campuses. So, we deal a lot in many of the conflicts that really fall outside of higher education in general. We're doing, our contracts with coaches really are entertainment contracts, because what do we ask our coaches to do? We ask them to teach and coach and lead young men and women, but we also ask them to be part of the entertainment industry. And with that comes huge contracts. Now working on my football coach's contract. At last revision, we were at 62 pages of contract for my new head football coach. So, we are big business, and, there are conflicts that come with that. But, I'm very proud, and it's a difficult challenge for an athletic director to run this sports and entertainment business within higher education and try to hold to the values that an academic institution should have. We hold our coaches to a higher standard because we are in intercollegiate athletics. If we were a professional sports teams, I would look at my coaches far differently than I do in the collegiate setting. We're not a win-at-all-cost program. We should not be. They're out there. We compete against them. I know that. But one of the reasons I went to the University of Arkansas was to see if what I considered my brand of athletic leadership, and one that Dr. Jones referenced, was one focused on the student athlete, focused on helping young people grow and succeed and be successful in life. The NCAA runs a great commercial, 97% of all student athletes go pro in something other than their sport. And that's so true. We're about 98% of our student athletes go pro in something other than athletics. So we try to balance this. At the same time, we try to make sure that our student athletes get as much out of that education as they possibly can. And so that's an important piece of our program. You're probably asking yourself, what does an AD know about ethics? Certainly, we've seen a number of high-profile missteps by leaders, coaches, student athletes in BCS level intercollegiate athletics today. You don't have to look too far to see things at schools such as Notre Dame, Louisville, who's playing in the Final Four this week, Texas Tech, North Carolina, our neighbors, Ohio State, and certainly Penn State. And then on the pages of the paper this morning, we see a coach who apparently has overstepped his bounds and has been relieved of his job at Arkansas, or relieved at his job at Rutgers today. So certainly there are many examples in higher education, in intercollegiate athletics. We're really no different than any other part of our society. We have challenges. We have examples of outstanding success stories and those of people that have fallen short. We certainly at Arkansas had our challenge 1 year ago on April 1st of 2012. And, I'm not going to get into a lot of great detail there, But those of you who are not familiar with the story, we had a very successful football coach who had taken us to 21 victories in 2 seasons, our first ever BCS Bowl appearance, and a Cotton Bowl victory prior to 2012. This coach, again, had been very successful on the field. He had done some good things off the field. He had provided discipline in his program. So there were some positive things happening in our program, but you may recall that he took a Sunday afternoon motorcycle ride and had an accident. And through the course of that accident, some things were revealed. Some unethical conduct was revealed that caused us to really go into crisis mode at the University of Arkansas. We had a high-profile coach who was quite honestly loved and revered throughout the state. He had brought them the athletic success that they passionately yearned for. And I will say this, I've lived in 10 different states, and I know I'm in Buckeye country, but there are no more passionate fans than the ones that follow the Razorbacks at the University of Arkansas. So, you know, we were in a crisis situation. We had a coach who'd been extremely successful. He'd had an accident, and it was revealed through the course of the investigation that he wasn't alone on his motorcycle, and it became known in the public that he was having an extramarital affair. Now, many people across the country knew that much of the story, and they thought that that was really the end of the story, that this was a coach who was terminated for cause because he was having an extramarital affair. Despite how I may view that as a person, as a husband and a father, that's not the reasons that he was let go from the University of Arkansas. Through the course of that investigation, we found a number of unethical conduct. The young woman that he was having an affair with, he had recently hired as a member of his staff, not disclosing that he had this relationship. And certainly those of you studied in anything about human resources and competition for jobs, not disclosing that someone has a relationship with you is a violation of the hiring practice. It's a violation of the conflict of interest policy that the University of Arkansas certainly had, and I'm sure most institutions and corporations across the country have. And so through the course of this investigation, we found deceit, we found lying, and we had found that the coach had also provided a $20,000 gift to the young woman that he had also hired to his staff that he was having an affair. So, you know, there are many, many lessons here, far too many to talk about tonight, but the question for me was, you know, when does a person's personal relationship become a professional conflict? And that's what we had to work through in this crisis, and it truly was a crisis. But, you know, generally, in my view, someone's personal life is their personal life. And what they do on their own time in their own life is their business. And, you know, an affair is something between the individuals involved, their families. That's their business. But when it becomes my business as the leader of our athletic program is when it intersected with the personal commitments he has as a leader and coach in our program. So through the course of the evaluation that we had, the core issue was all trust was gone. I could no longer trust a coach that I was entrusting the lives of 122 football student athletes with. That was the core issue. The man had been dishonest with me. He had covered up things with me. He had not been honest, and he didn't meet the expectations of the student that we have for the student athletes that he was leading. So again, nationally, it may not have made it to this part of the country. I'm sure it did at some level, but this wasn't a decision of a coach being let go for his personal failures. It's when those personal relationships intersected with his professional commitments, and he had given someone an unfair advantage in the hiring practice, someone that he had a relationship with. We had 156 applicants for that position. and the coach chose to hire someone that he had a previously undisclosed relationship. So that was the core. Many ethical issues in there. Great opportunities for leadership. What I talked about before, this was really a 10-day period that seemed like it went by in 24 hours. There was the accident. There was 5 days later that I put him on administrative leave because I became aware of the relationship that he had shared with me. I became aware that he had lied to me about the circumstances of the accident, who he was with him, the involvement of the young woman who was also an employee in our department. And then we had a 5-day review of the situation. And they were very long, hard process, a human resources process, where we had to interview the individuals involved, we had to interview staff, we had to interview people at the accident scene. Again, there were a number of ethical issues. One of the things that played out was when he was injured in the wreck, they did not call 911. They called the state trooper who supported the football team. You know, many times you see the coach is escorted out by a state trooper for protection, and that's very much needed. But rather than call for an emergency vehicle, the cover-up began at that time. He called a state trooper who he had a relationship with. He met him and then took him to the hospital. That state trooper was actually called into an ethics review by the state of Arkansas. He really acted in an appropriate way. They found that he had no fault. However, they did find that in violation of state laws, he had accepted some gifts from us. And I say us, from our athletic program, from our football program. You know, they traveled on the road with us. We may give them a warm-up suit. We may give them a hat because we want them to blend in. Well, that was a violation of the state ethics code, and they received some sort of censure for that. And we've had to change all of our policies on how we thank and include the state troopers in supporting our team. So it's an interesting sidelight that was unveiled in all of this. But we spent 5 days reviewing this situation, and then came to a decision. And you know, there was great examples of leadership in this process, because once I had arrived at my decision, I first had to meet with my chancellor, David Gerhardt, who Rock knows well, who's the chancellor of the University of Arkansas. And, you know, Dave Gerhardt showed leadership, because when I sat down with him and shared with him the facts, you know, he could have tried to take the decision another direction. I'm sure he was hearing from constituents who said, look, this is a great football coach. We've got to find a way to keep him. I was offered numerous suggestions on penalties I could impose, suspensions I could impose, you know, cutting his salary. All these options were brought forward by, I think, well-meaning people, but people that really didn't understand the role that intercollegiate athletics should play in an institution, and it should play with its own students, and particularly the student athletes. But when I sat down with Dave Gerhardt and explained where I was, there was not one waiver from support for my decision. And you know, as an athletic director going into that room with your boss, you're not quite sure what that answer is going to be. You don't know. I thought I knew. I thought I had Dave Gerhardt's support, but I didn't know what factors a president or chancellor may be facing in the chair that they sit in every day. I only knew my perspective as an athletic director, but Chancellor Gerhardt's commitment was unwavering. And then our next step was to go to the president of our system, and Dr. Don Bobbitt, a new president of our system, had been on the job, I think, less than 6 months. And here's a man who doesn't know the players, and he's obviously works for our board of trustees, and certainly he didn't know where the ground was that he was standing on. But you know what? He could have taken that decision a different direction. He could have said, look, we've got to try to make a way for this to work out because he's such a successful football coach. But he didn't waver. I get a little emotional talking about this because, you know, this was a defining moment, not only for an athletic program, or really a university. At the University of Arkansas, we really are the flagship institution of our state. So for me, it was a decision that was going to impact not only my world of athletics, but it was going to impact how people, I'm sorry for getting emotional, but how they were going to look at Arkansas from around the country. And so he supported that decision, and then we went down the path of we have Board of Trustee members who we all report to at the University of Arkansas. And we went down the list, and to a man and to a woman, they supported the decision. So for that decision to be made, it took really leadership on many levels, on multiple levels, because we've all seen at other institutions that maybe a different decision was arrived at that allowed someone to maybe didn't deserve to remain in their position to remain. And I don't cast judgment on the people. I don't pretend to do that. I don't know the circumstances that they were dealing with. But I know this, that it was the best decision that we could make for our university. And I want to bring it back a little bit to business again before I summarize, and then I really do want to take questions. And but first of all, I want to say that business ethics is good business. You can see it in our example at the University of Arkansas. We were in the middle of fundraising for a $40 million athletic football complex when this crisis occurred. And there were many who said, well, they're going to keep the coach because they won't be able to raise the funds without the coach in place. And, you know, I didn't believe that. And you know what? Our fans showed that good ethics is good business, because we funded that facility through gifts. Not only that, shortly after we made our decision, we had a donor step forward and make a $1 million contribution from the foundation that he ran. Rock will know, the Donald W. Reynolds Foundation. Made a $1 million commitment to support our leadership education program and our Student Athlete Success Center. And then the leader of that organization, Fred W. Smith, stepped forward with a personal gift of $250,000 in support of the decision that was made at Arkansas. So we not only funded our building, we got unsolicited gifts of over $1 million, and we had our record-breaking annual fund year in 2012. So I think business ethics is good business, and I hope that you will take that away. In 2013, we will break that record once again as our supporters have stepped up and obviously supported us. And then, again, we don't have to look too far to the east of us to see Penn State University. And again, I don't claim to know the facts in that situation, but I think clearly there was some failure in leadership there, and that institution will pay a heavy price financially for the settlements that will come from a lack of ethics and integrity at some role, at some place. I don't pass that judgment. I just know it's happening. And again, it's a place where we can see that business ethics is good business. In closing, let me say a few things. First, it's discovering who you are, what you stand for, and just as important, you may who you are and what you stand for and what you won't stand for. Because one of the things that I recall during this time was when I met with the committee that hired me at the University of Arkansas. It was a 4-hour interview. I'd call it an interview. It was really a conversation. But I'm going to get emotional when I share this too, so I apologize. But I was an established athletic director at that time, and they said, you know, what do you want us to know about you? And I said, well, if you're looking for a win-at-all-cost AD, I'm not your guy, because that's not why I'm in this business. So, you know, I've always remembered that. That committee always remembered it, because we went on to talk about what that means. What does win-at-all-costs mean for you, Jeff Long, when you say that? And we had that discussion. And when I went in Dr. Gerhardt's office that day, gosh, apologize. It's been a year, and I still get emotional about decisions like this. But, you know, we agreed that these were principles, these were ethics that we were going to stand behind. And if it meant we lost our jobs, we would lose our jobs. These were things that we believed that strongly in. So you're being streamed live, I know that, so I apologize for those who see me crackling here in front of the folks here. But, you know, life is a journey, literally and figuratively, and you will see that as you leave Ohio Wesleyan University. You'll figure out who you stand by. You'll figure out what that code to live by that you all need to understand. And you know, you'll know when you're in that difficult decision, you're in that crisis point. Oh yes, thank you, I remember now. But when you're at that crisis point, you know, when you know who you are, you won't spend time trying to figure out who you are to make the right decision. You'll be able to focus on the challenge at hand. And you know what, Ohio Wesleyan, while I didn't know it at the time, certainly helped propel me on my journey. And I think often of the lessons I learned here. I think often of the men that I emulated and that I looked up to here at Ohio Wesleyan. And, you know, I've been gone a long time, and I shared with folks that, you know, a lot of emotions come rushing back when I come back to this campus. And, you know, I'm realizing how much it meant to me as I come back and speak to all of you. So it is a tremendous honor for me to speak with you. I really do consider it a privilege to come back to my alma mater, and I have been nothing but proud of Ohio Wesleyan University. I have had to explain what a bishop is, but I've had pleasure doing that over the years as well. But again, I want to thank you. Thank you for your attention, and go Bishops. But I think we're going to take some questions. I believe that's correct, and we're... I'm much better with questions, and I'm told I can only take questions from people with microphones so we can get it on streaming. So please, don't hesitate. You will make me very happy, excuse me, if you ask questions. Anyone? How about some of the young, right here, Mr. Prey. Microphone.
Okay, sorry, I had to get it turned on.
All right, the coach in me is coming out. Microphone, let's go.
Jeff, when did you decide, going through the process in that 10-day period, when did you decide that you'd made the right decision, and how did you feel?
You know, people ask me all the time, that must have been the toughest decision of your life. The truth is, it was not a tough decision. Because I knew who I was, I knew what I stood for. So the decision wasn't tough. Once I knew the facts, and the facts were clear that the relationship occurred, that money changed hands, that you know, he hired her while having, that certainly violated all the codes of ethics, all the hiring practices. So I knew what we had to do. I didn't relish it, but I knew what we had to do, and I knew we were going to do it. So it allowed me in that time period to really focus on managing the crisis. And I mean that in a very positive way. When you're dealing with something like this, it's not a simple decision. The simple decision is, yes, I'm going to make a change. But how you go about it is not a simple thing. There are legal sides to this. There are public relations sides. There are people's rights we had to protect on both sides. There were rights of the coach we had to protect, and I wanted to make sure we did that. And I think we did a good job of doing that as I look back on it. But it was during the course of that, it wasn't a difficult decision. And I think it shocks some people when they hear me say it wasn't a tough decision. No, it wasn't a tough decision. Managing everything, the people, the human relationships. Because remember, you know, when you fire a one coach, it's not one person. You have families, you have staff, you have support staff, all depending on that. And most importantly to me, I had 122 football student athletes that looked up to this individual as their leader, and I had just ripped them away from that program. So those were the difficult things, working with the human piece of all this. And I think anybody who's gone through business, gone through running an organization, it's the working with people that's the hardest part. It's the dealing with people and human resources and relationships. Yes, sir, back here. Microphone.
What will the checks and balances you'll put in place for the hiring authority of the upcoming football coach?
What have I done with that? It's really to follow our process because, again, we followed a process in that hiring. What we didn't know is that there was a relationship there. We didn't know that that occurred until after the fact. So, you know what, there was some on the national stage, some things played out that we violated our own hiring practice. That really actually wasn't true. Our university has a 30-day period when you post a job, and as archaic, I hope nobody at Arkansas is watching, but we are actually working to change this. But we have what we believe is a little bit archaic. You have a 30 days that you post the job. You can't interview anybody during that 30-day period, and then you can't begin interviews till after that 30 days. However, that is the process. However, there is a bona fide waiver process that you can pursue, and we did that. We did that every step of the way. We filed the first waiver to interview prior to the 30-day period, and then we finally applied for the waiver to hire before the 30 days. So we followed the process. So at this point, we're actually trying to reduce that period because in our world, different than the education, and this is one of those conflicts where we're running an athletic, sports, and entertainment business in the confines of higher education. You know, when we're hiring a dean or a faculty member, 30 days, that is a blink of an eye. I mean, it might be a 6-month process to have a committee and research and all that, but in our world, in the business end of our world, we have to act very quickly. And that's why a 30-day waiting period for us really doesn't work, because especially when you're hiring coaches, because at our level, the window for recruiting and all those things are very tight. So, we oftentimes apply for waivers, which is often, which is part of the process. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
I suppose you've been watching the news today about Rutgers, and I wondered if you had and I apologize, I came in late, so if you've talked about it already, you don't need to say anything. But
no, I will comment on Rutgers to this effect. I really haven't been able to see much of it. I know Mike Rice, the coach involved. He was an assistant coach for us at the University of Pittsburgh for 1 year while I was there. Just the cuts and pieces I saw, again, on the surface, it certainly appears that he crossed the line. I was sharing with some earlier today. I believe in aggressive coaching. I think at our level that's more the norm. But there's a line, and that line was crossed from what I saw in the physical piece of it. There's also the verbal abuse, and again, I was sharing earlier with the group. I'm used to coaches coaching aggressively. I'm used to coaches using what language that we would not use in normal circumstances. But there's a difference in using language, profanity, to motivate someone to try to get them achieve more than what they think they can, and crossing that line where the language and the profanity becomes tearing down an individual, demeaning a human being. And coaches have to walk that line today more than ever. In the past, we were talking a little bit about Coach Knight at the dinner table tonight, and I think things that Coach Knight did earlier in his career, he wouldn't have been able to coach as long as he did if people looked at the world like they do now. So, and I think that's a good thing. Again, I think you coach aggressively. I think you have to be aggressive. I think you can use profanity to motivate, but you can't use it to cross that line to demean a person. And that's a tough call sometimes. And again, I don't want to comment too specifically about the Rutgers situation because I don't know the details, and I've just caught glimpses of it as I've gone through the day today. Yes. No, you can project.
I think I can project this one.
No, it's fine.
Substitution. So the super PAC, definitely a great business move on your part. Terrific. The people have done it. But it's left out a lot of really good institutions. And it compromises the future of the NCAA, which you said you needed to balance your athletics and your scholarship situation. It also makes football and maybe basketball, but certainly football, way more important than the other sports. Doesn't this present a pretty good ethical challenge for you
Certainly, depending on how you look at it. You know, there's a number of different ways this can go, Tom. We don't know what the future is gonna look like. And you know, you talk about super conference. For a long time, I didn't think it was ever gonna happen. You know, I didn't think there was gonna be this 4 or 5 group of super conferences. Well, I was wrong. I think we're headed that direction. I think we have a pause. But this is my personal view. I'm not representing the University of Arkansas, and when I say this, but I think we're headed to that. I think it's a 4 or 5, 16-team leagues. You know, certainly television is a really driving factor. The revenue that's coming is incredible. But I'll also tell you that, Tom, we're also seeing a change in that money's starting to flow from a number of institutions from athletics to their campuses now. University of Arkansas is a great example. We're a totally self-supporting institution. We receive no student fees. We receive no direct support from the university. And we spend, we calculate about $3 million back. We're a revenue source of about $3 million back to the institution. In the coming year, we will actually fund the construction of a new classroom building on our campus. We will be committing $1.25 million a year for 30 years to build an athletic campus, a classroom building on our campus. So at these high-level institutions in these super conferences, I think you're going to see, you know, revenue generated at such a level, you're going to see money flowing back to campus, which presidents and chancellors are excited about on our level. So, you know, when we were talking about today at lunch with the group about the EA Sports litigation from, what's my man from UCLA again? Who was it? You guys here? Ed O'Bannon. Ed O'Bannon. I keep forgetting Ed's name, but that's in the courts today. And you know what? The outcome of that court case could dramatically change the course of intercollegiate athletics at the BCS level, super conference level, because that will, one, there would be penalties and we would have to pay monies out to student athletes over a number of years, similar to those who might be familiar with the restricted earnings coach that existed in the NCAA probably about 15 years ago. There was a class action type suit brought, and we all had to pay millions of dollars out to a group of student athletes who were determined to be undercompensated for the work they did. And so we could see that kind of thing happening in this Ed O'Bannon case. So, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. There's a lot of angst with the NCAA by a number of institutions about the organization and how it's grown and what it does and doesn't do for its membership. Other questions? Sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, given that Arkansas is an institution of higher learning, how does the university justify giving so much more money to the athletic program or athletes as compared to the students that aren't athletes? And do you justify that, to your point earlier about giving money back to the general student population?
Yeah, help me with that, your question, because I need you to rephrase it.
So I guess the budget of the athletic program and all the money that's spent on athletes' scholarships is significantly more than what's spent on regular students or
okay.
Athletes. So how do we justify that, given that the university's goal is to educate its students?
Well, first of all, I can justify it a heck of a lot easier at Arkansas because we are a self-sustaining institution, meaning we don't take funds from the academic institution. We're actually sending money from athletics to academics, which is probably not the case at, depending on how you figure it, there are 20 schools in the country that are self-supporting. If you look at it another way, it's less than a dozen. We're one of those less than a dozen schools. So, you know what, it's a difficult difficult thing. People would look, there's a number of people that would look at it this way. First of all, I think there's a value to intercollegiate athletics at an institution. And I think what it does for the student athletes in the program, the education piece that occurs for them outside of the classroom, on the playing and practice fields, and then in our place, the things we're doing with leadership training and service learning, all those things. And how do I justify it? We ask those student athletes to perform for the institution. We take them away from a lot of academic pursuits, study time, all those things to represent the institution. And as we all said before, 98% of them are going pro in something else. So they're going to use that education to further enhance their life. So, we're spending money, resources on them as student athletes. We're providing money and academic support because we are taking them away from the classroom. We're taking them on the road to travel to represent the university. Now, if I'm one of those institutions like I was at the University of Pittsburgh, where there was direct support coming from the university to support the athletic program, I would tell you that that's a tremendous buy for the academic institution because the public relations, we're part of the marketing and public relations arm of the university. So the exposure we provide through intercollegiate athletic competition is worth far more than the amount of money they're spending on the athletic program. So for me, education's at the core of what we do. It's not a byproduct. It really is at the core for the student athletes in our program. So it's an easy time for me justifying it. Now, like I said, if I'm on a campus and I'm a faculty member and I'm at an institution where they're spending lots of money, I could make an argument on that side of the house that they need to spend less in athletics. But you're asking the wrong guy. I told you earlier, the reason I came to college was because of sports, because of athletics. It drove me even at the Division III level. I get it, those guys at the Division I level where I work, they get a full scholarship, they get all that. Heck, I wasn't finished playing. I came to Ohio Wesleyan because I wanted to play. So sport has meant everything to me in my life. It's helped me get my education. And again, for 98% of those student athletes we have in our program, we're helping them get their education, which they'll have a better life as they go forward. Yes. Dr. Simon? Alice?
I have a question.
You're violating your rule, Alice. Yes.
Okay. Could you comment a little bit about what happens to your core values that you create as a collegiate student when you leave college and you go to the pros? How is the environment different?
That's a very good question. For me, professional sports is something very different. And if I was working in professional sports, to be quite honest with you, I'd be a win-at-all-cost person. Because that's an environment, that's pure business. And I guess I would say win at all cost. I mean, there's always a line, so I don't mean that. But certainly I'd be much more aggressive in professional sports because it's a business. It's a true business. The people that own those professional sport teams are in it to generate revenue. So, you know what, in a college campus, I have to worry about who I take sponsorship money from, Pro sports, I can take every alcoholic beverage dollar, and because that's what I'm designed to do. In college, we're in a different setting. And I don't know if I'm getting to the core of your question, but we're at a different setting where education is a big part of that. The culture and environment of higher education, I'm not going to take casino gambling ads. I'm not going to take beer advertisements. If I was a pure businessman, absolutely, because sponsorship dollars, there's nobody that spends more on sports advertising than alcohol, than beer companies. So, that's the difference I see. Unfortunately, in professional sports, more and more of the student athlete or the athletes are coming directly to the pros without any college experience. And I think those are the places where they struggle because they have to invest a tremendous amount in trying to educate those professional athletes. The NBA has done actually a pretty good job of that educational process, but they've had to spend that money to educate them because they weren't in the college setting. So to me, they're really totally different worlds. I can be much more aggressive in the way I market and run my program in professional sports because it is about business solely. Yes, sir.
Does it hurt a say, a Division I program to bring these athletes in, scholar athletes, that leave after a year. I mean, Kentucky is a perfect example of that this year in basketball.
Yeah, that's been a debate. Kentucky is obviously the poster child for what we call the one and done athlete, the athlete who wants to come in and use that 1 year to go on to professional sports. What I think that the public doesn't quite understand is that rule is not really the NCAA rule. It's really the NBA rule. We have an agreement with Major League Baseball. Now, Major League Baseball is different than the NBA and NFL because they have the antitrust agreement. Okay, so we can agree with them to, once a baseball player comes to our school, they have to stay 3 years. And it used to be that way in basketball, but that's now all changed. So baseball, I think, has got it right. I would love to be able to say to a student athlete, if you came to Arkansas, you have to stay 3 years. I'd love to say they have to stay 4 years, but we've already passed that. But, baseball, you can stay for 3 years once you come before the major leagues will take you. The NBA, it's only one. And I don't see the NBA changing. And we can't put in a rule that says you can't go to the NBA until you're a junior because the NBA is not supporting it. The NBA says, come on, after your first year. And the NBA is smart. Why do you think does anybody talked about why does the NBA require their players to play at least 1 year in college before they come? Tom?
They want to find out if they can play.
Yes, but very true, but really what they want, that's part of the answer. The other part of the answer is they want that exposure for that athlete, so they get that exposure as a freshman at Kentucky. They're known all over. Then they can take them and they're ready made for the marketing plans of the NBA. They're ready made for the shoe contracts. They're ready made for the apparel contracts. That's why they do it. It's free marketing public promotion for them. If the kids go straight into the D League, we don't know. You don't know some of these players in the NBA now because they did come from the D League. I find myself, and I follow college basketball very closely, I'll turn on the NBA and I'll say, where did that go? I don't remember him playing anywhere. Well, when I do a little research, he didn't play anywhere. He went to the D League and came up to the NBA. So how are we doing on time? Okay, let me wrap by just saying again, I can't not express to you what an honor and a privilege it is for me to come back to my Ohio Wesleyan University. I thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm a proud bishop. Thank you very much.
I know I speak on behalf of all of us in expressing our gratitude to Jeff for his time with us and our admiration and respect for his leadership. We do have an OWU blanket with the battling bishop and a spread from the OWU magazine with Jeff was featured a couple of years ago. So, yeah.
And it's a letter opener. You can't take it on the plane.
Oh.
So thank all of you for being here and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.